This show is sponsored by Great Kingdom Palace, giving life a meaning.
Welcome everybody to the Amit Kainth Show, Get Closer to the Truth, and thank you for home tuning in. Now, do you ever wonder, what does it actually mean to be spiritual? Do you need a religion to be spiritual? Is spirituality a serious business? Now today I've got a very special guest who is the author of the book called For God's Sake, and he's going to help us answer some of these questions today. So let's do welcome Budge.
How are you doing? Hiya. Good, thank you.
Thank you for coming onto the show today.
It's a pleasure.
So I've got a lot of questions for you, and I've written some of these down so I don't miss them out. So first of all, tell me a bit about your spiritual journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I started off as a practicing Christian as a child, and went down a very atheistic route in my teens and early 20s, very much the sort of politicized sex, drugs, rock and roll, hippies, alternative counterculture, all that kind of stuff. And I was also getting increasingly involved in drinking, and there were things that weren't working out in my life the way I'd like them to. And in my late 20s, early 30s, I realized now, looking back, I was looking for something else, something different. And I read an article in the Guardian newspaper at about that time on particle physics, quantum physics, where these Nobel Prize winning scientists were saying at the very micro subatomic level, everything's connected, everything joins together, everything. Matter is illusion, it's all joined up together. And it was like a nudge that just gave me this sort of impetus to start looking for a more spiritual solution to my growing problems in my personal, professional life. So that was really the kind of kick-off point.
The kick-off point. Because obviously, you'd been drinking from an early age, from since 20, and
it was great to start with. I loved it.
That's right, exactly, And obviously, and then it kind of mid-30s, you then kind of obviously stopped drinking. But
I stopped drinking later on.
That's right. Yeah. But in that 15 years, you kind of had this, if you like, a big spiritual journey, if you like, where you tried everything from going to the Far East, going to retreats, practicing meditation, Tai Chi, all sorts, right? You read the Bible, you did everything, right?
Yep.
How did you find that? So this was your spiritual journey, and how was all that? That soul searching.
Yeah, I found a lot of very useful things out about what spirituality is, and how it can work. But it didn't, in the end, in final analysis. And I can speak personally, it didn't work for me because I was a drunk. My spiritual salvation was when I got into recovery from alcoholism when I was 44 years old. Although having said that, since then, I haven't had a drink for 15 years now, the things that I picked up on my spiritual wild goose chase to get to that point, there were two parallel things going on. There was a very shiny, new age, light creature, this seeker up here, and underneath all that was this, rock bottom drunk emerging. And I had to put these two things together. And obviously the only way to do that was to stop drinking. But once I put the drink down, and the program of recovery is a very spiritual thing, it's not religious, it is spiritual. The things I'd learnt earlier became more meaningful to me and helped more. So meditation, the Buddhist philosophy, the basic idea within all traditions, it's in the book. Copies are still available.
This is the book, For God's Sake, by Budge. And so I've read the book and it's very, very good. And this talks about his spiritual journey on what you went through and basically all the steps that you'd taken, Yeah. But it's a very interesting read, definitely very interesting. What made you write the book?
Well, I've always written. I wrote a couple of novels about 25 years ago now, which almost were published, but not quite. The Swines. They never saw my genius back then, unfortunately. Although that might have killed me. With hindsight, we never know, do we? That might have been the worst thing that could have happened. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to write again, and when I realised that I could write about this stuff, the philosophy, the spirituality, the state of the world, in a literary voice, because my literary voice was always very, very colloquial, very hopefully humorous. So it's spirituality with added jokes and swearing, that's what's in there. Because what I'm trying to do is say to people, which is that question about, is it serious? It's very serious, but it doesn't have to be solemn and pious and po-faced. Anybody can go down this spiritual path. You don't have to join a church or a mosque. It's great if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine, no problem with that.
Yeah.
But people tend to look at spiritual people as being somehow nothing to do with us normal people getting with our lives. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is the truth. There are many ways of accessing it, and you don't have to worry about, the occasional swear word or getting things a bit wrong or not being perfect or not being a saint or not, it's okay.
That's right.
Just follow the path.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, obviously, and I totally agree with you. And the spirituality should be with us daily,
Yeah.
But we've got to live in the world.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we've all got to work. We've all got to basically, we've all got relationships, and we've all got to, live and earn money. And yes, we're all going to sin, but spirituality is something that I would say that, like yourself, is within us, and it's important to kind of, if you like, to practice that daily, and not just to go to the church on a Sunday or to say grace before dinner. To put it in part of your parcel.
And living in the moment. I mean, the power of now was a big influence for me as well. The Eckhart Tolle book, which you may have come across.
Well, I saw you on a show, and you were saying that you've got a son, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very important that when you're with your son, you try to basically be with him at that moment, at that time, and to kind of forget about everything else. How do you do that?
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because my head will go off anywhere. And it's the same with meditation, isn't it? When you're meditating, your head will go off anywhere. You'll be in New York or yesterday or 10 years' time or whatever. Right. But it doesn't matter. As long as you're still sitting there, you are meditating. So with my son, with anything really, try and be present, try and remember I'm actually here. I don't have to worry about what's happening in 2 hours' time. And of course, children, they are the masters and mistresses, if you will, of living in the moment. And that is a fantastic thing to learn from. Yeah. So I'm always having to remind myself that he is my teacher in that respect. Stay with what he's doing. Yeah. And it's cool. And I have a daughter who's 22 now, and I didn't miss too much of her childhood, but I miss a lot of the meaningful interaction in her early years because I was drinking, part-time dad. To have it 2 days a week, And I thought with my son, I want to try and honour that precious time because it doesn't last long.
No, it doesn't.
He's 7, he's a big boy now.
Oh,
and
he's
all the time, he's getting older,
Yeah.
So. But it's a wonderful thing.
Now, you talk about also the fact that, meditation as well, and obviously I know you practice that. How do you do meditation?
Well, confession, folks, I don't meditate every day as I know I should and must to achieve this enlightened state here. I did practice meditation on a daily basis for a long time. What I do now, and it's laziness, rather than, lack of belief in it, because it does work. A lot of my practice is around my recovery, so there's a lot goes on around that. But I'm very clear about the importance of handing things over to God. So before I came on just now, it was like, thy will be done. Yeah. When I'm nervous, when I'm anxious, when I'm worried, when I'm going to a meeting I'm not certain about, all that kind of stuff, just hand it over. So that's a big part of my ongoing spiritual practice. I think for me, meditation is that very simple Buddhist idea of watching the breath. Just sit still, focus the attention on the breath. As I say, when you drift off, it doesn't matter. Because people say, I can't meditate. Everyone can meditate. If you sit there for 10 minutes, you're meditating.
Now, one last question before we take a break. Life is very, very overpowering. And obviously, there's big life forces out there that drag us into the big wide world. How would you say one stays on the spiritual path?
Well, I think the tools are important. I think the meditation, the prayer, the community coming together, and I've got my own recovery community that I'm involved with. These are all really important. I think we have to be very gentle on ourselves. There's a very busy world out there. It's very conflictual. It's very difficult. There was a guy I heard give a talk, a South American, Native American Indian, and somebody asked him, how do we relax over here? How do we stay spiritual? It's easy for you in your forest. How do we stay spiritual over here? He said, get plenty of rest. because the input for us is very intense.
Yeah.
So I think be gentle on yourselves. I will still have duvet days where I disappear and just hide away because life is scary. But I know that's just a bad day at the office.
That's right,
and it's okay. So forgive myself all the time, over and over again, and each other.
So live a
and get
balanced
through
life.
it, and life is good.
Yeah.
I wanted to kill myself, I wanted to die. That has changed, and that's a spiritual change.
And the spiritual part, overpowering
absolutely.
it, and obviously the sort of spirituality in effect, like what I say, is giving you that peace and happiness in effect.
Yeah, and that's a spiritual experience, going from death to life, that's what it's all about.
Great. Well, listen, this book can be bought where?
In the foyer.
In the foyer, yeah.
It's online. You can buy it through Amazon. Order it through bookshops. It's available.
Very good.
So wherever. There's my website, www.alanbudge.com. It's available there. So have a look.
Great. Well, we're going to take a small break, and
Thank
so
you.
don't go too far because when we come back, me and Alan are going to face the audience and take some questions. So we're back shortly. Welcome back to the Amit Kainth Show, Get Closer to the Truth. Now, just before the break, we had Alan Budge, who was talking about his spiritual journey in terms of what he did for 15 years to then find his kind of, if you like, happiness and his way of life. What we're going to do now is we're going to take some questions from the audience, and let's see what they bring up, and let's see what we can answer. You ready to go? Let's go.
Yeah.
So, any questions, guys?
Can we go?
We've got one over there.
Do we need a spiritual teacher?
Good question. You want to take that? Shall I take that?
Do you want to kick off and then?
Okay. All right. So, a spiritual teacher in life has got its obstacles, and if you want to learn how to drive, we have someone to teach us. If you want to learn maths, we have somebody to teach us. And similarly with spirituality, that it's important that we have. I feel that maybe because obviously life is very overpowering, to have somebody to then guide you. Okay, you know what? To basically, if you've got some, kind of problems in life, if you like, someone to go to. So I feel it's important to have somebody, a spiritual teacher, or someone who can kind of guide you when you come through some, difficult times. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people who've been there before you are obviously helpful because they know the territory, they know. What the pitfalls are. I think sometimes it's useful to have a teacher who's not a million miles ahead of you because it can be quite daunting.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama is an amazing, humble man, but you look at him and you think, my goodness me, I'll never get anywhere approaching that. So sometimes it's useful to have someone who's a little bit further down the path as well.
That's right.
To help you through that.
Is that somebody you saw when you went to the Far East?
Not in the Far East. I've been in his presence a couple of times in England. And it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
It comes out of that humility, and he's funny.
Yeah.
I saw him with Russell Brand actually in Manchester a couple of years ago, and it was just great. He walked on and he grabbed hold of Russell Brand's beard and grinned. It's the first thing he did. And then Russell Brand said, "There's not a lot you can do in a situation like this. When the Dalai Lama's got your beard, just stay still and chill out."
That's right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, excellent. Any others?
Yes, I have a question. Does spiritual practice become second nature?
Does spiritual practice become second nature? Should I
Good
start
question.
with that?
Where
Yeah.
do you wanna go?
I think it does. I think it's like anything else. We've got to practice it. And I think I said in the interview, in my experience, we are creatures of habit. As I said before, my habit when I hit a problem in life for a long time was to pick a drink up. So I had to unlearn that habit and replace it with more positive habits. So I think if you, it's the same with writing the book. When I started writing the book, it took a lot out of me. But as I carried on writing, my writing muscles got stronger. It's the same with anything, isn't it? So yeah, I think it becomes second nature eventually, but you've got to keep working at it. And you won't get anything back unless you put something into it.
That's right. And I totally agree. I mean, your question was, should spirituality become second nature? It should actually be what we call a 50-50 balance, right? Because what you've got to realize that we are in this world. And we've got to live in this world, and we've got to pay the bills, and we've all got relationships that we've got to basically fulfill. Those worldly objectives actually are not going to give us a long-term happiness. So I don't really look at spirituality as second nature. In my life, I actually put it as primary nature. Because I know when I fuel the soul, I'm actually then getting happiness. That is actually what gives me peace. And there's a saying that basically in the mind, there's two wolves fighting. Which one wins? One is all good and one is all bad. The one that wins is the one that you will fuel, or it's the one that you feed. And if you look at it, the mind, if you like, is all bad. The 5 forces of the negative. So we've got greed, lust, attachment, pride, and anger. And they're the forces that are going to take us around in circles again and again and again. And the soul is all good. And if you fuel the soul by doing those actions, that is then actually what gives you the peace and the happiness that you want in this world. And that is actually what kind of, in effect, will in effect take you to what you call your soul destination. So the answer to your question, try to put spirituality in primary, or at least keep it a 50-50 balance. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. What does it mean to become spiritual?
You want to take that one?
What does it mean to become spiritual? I don't know is the short answer, because I'm still very much on that journey. I have very spiritual days. I have days when I feel very peaceful and everything's in place and everything is exactly as it should be in the world. And that's usually when, as you said in your book, I've been doing something for somebody else or taken myself out of my own ego, my own preoccupations. There are other days when the world looks very threatening, very challenging, very difficult. I've had issues over my lifetime with depression as well, that kind of stuff. What does it mean to be spiritual? It is a state of grace. It's not something I can will into being. You know, have good days and bad days. But I'm on a path, and sometimes I will slip a bit further off it than other times, and the practice and the tools and the appreciation are the best way I know of keeping me, as close to that path as possible. We're encouraged to write gratitude lists in the morning, the things we're thankful of, because that dilutes the power of those negative thoughts.
That's right.
The glass becomes half full rather than half empty. That sort of idea. There's always something to be grateful for. If you've read the memoir of the Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl, who talks about, the things he could appreciate in the most catastrophic human situation imaginable. That doesn't mean the Holocaust gets an easy ride. But I'm saying that even in the most diabolical situations, it's possible to reach a place of some spiritual, understanding and acceptance.
And it goes on to what we were talking about before. In the day, being spiritual doesn't mean just going to the church or going to the temple once a week or saying grace before dinner. And being spiritual, in my opinion, is what I've written in the book, The Gift of 7 Laws of Success. It's important to do meditation. But there's no point in doing meditation, obviously for a couple hours a day and then then living unethically all the rest of the day. You got it, meditation is obviously the anchor, if you like. You practice it. The more you practice, the more you're able to defuse, as if you like, yourself from the world when you want to, when we hit a big obstacle in life. But things like meditation, things like selfless service, things like giving away to charity, helping others, being positive, like Alan said, giving God the glory, handing, when he came into the stage, he handed the power, if you like, say, God, I'm going to go onto the show, I'm going to hand whatever comes out, and I'm going to hand it to you, So, and I think giving God the glory is very important, because obviously that lets us remain humble in life. Things like, which are very, very important, like transparency. The power inside of you is the power of love. The soul is all love. The soul is all, if you like, the soul is all truth. And so it's important to be where you can, truthful in life, to reduce the amount of negative outward actions. That's spiritual, so don't ill comment, don't abuse, don't hit, be trying to negate, if you like, the karmic balance, and, to hang around positive people. God wants you to be happy. God wants, that is part of spirituality. And so in the day, the people that you hang around are a mirror reflection of the person that you are. So it's important that you hang around, great people, and to be pure of heart. So, that is what it means to be, for me, my opinion, to be spiritual. Does that answer your question?
I think as well, just briefly, you talk about transparency, and honesty is such an important part of a spiritual path. Self-honesty. I've got to understand who I am and what I am. I am an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink for 15 years, but I'm still an alcoholic. If I pick a drink up tomorrow, I'll be heading off down that path. I have to know that about myself. So humility comes with that. And knowing my own limitations is, having that self-honesty. So for me, acceptance for a long time was this idea that no matter what happens, I'll be perfectly calm, perfectly relaxed, everything's fantastic, I will still love everybody. That to me was my idea of acceptance. I could never get there. So I was giving myself a hard time.
Yeah.
I've got to accept everything. And excuse me, I think I said a rude word then. That guy's just cut me up on the motorway. I'm going to go and kill him. You know, so I'm not accepting because I can't be perfectly forgiving of this person. What I have to accept about myself is I will feel angry, I will feel sad, I will feel unhappy about things. I've got to accept that about myself, and through that acceptance I can move gradually out of those states into more positive ones. But the bottom line is that self-honesty. It's got to start there.
That's great. Well, Alan, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Tell the audience again, how do they get hold of your book?
For God's sake, religion, atheism, and why I gave them up. My website, www.alanbudge.com, that's a good place to go. There's some reviews on there as well, but it is available through Amazon, and you can order it through bookshops. So, you know, I hope you get something from it. Thank you very much.
So thank you guys for coming to the show. And so do remember that in a day, if you want to find out more about what we're doing, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to be part of the audience, we'd love to have you here. Please do log on to www.amitkainth.co.uk, or even go onto YouTube. And if you've missed some of the previous shows, you can log on to YouTube and type in Amit Kainth, and some of the previous shows are there, and you can subscribe to the channel. So thank you, Alan, for coming onto the show. Thank you guys for coming out today, and we'll see you next week for more Get Close to the Truth.
This show is sponsored by Great Kingdom Palace, giving life a meaning.